There is a persistent narrative that EV charging is totally failing, that adoption is stalling, infrastructure is ahead of demand, and reliability still isn't where it needs to be. Today's conversation challenges that narrative with a call to focus on what data is saying, not headlines. On this episode of Field Frequency, I sit down with Florent Breton, co-founder and CEO of Paren, a data platform that processes over 100 million EV charging data points every single day across the U.S. We talk about uptime as a false signal, how reliability should be measured, and why capacity, demand, and execution are finally starting to move in sync. If charging economics, field operations, and where this industry is headed interests you, then this is a conversation worth sticking around for. Let's get into it. Welcome to another episode of Field Frequency, powered by Field Advantage. Field Advantage is an IT field services company specializing in the deployment, maintenance, and operation of critical infrastructure, including EV charging networks. Today, I'm happy to have Florent Breton, co-founder and CEO of Paren. Hi, Florent.
Hi, Jason. Thank you very much for having me over. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I'm glad that you were able to make some time today to come on Field Advantage and have a conversation. Look forward to learning more about what Paren does, what you've been doing in the space, and sharing for the audience just what you're bringing to the EV space. I'd like to start off, if we could, with your background. Your origin story is always a good launching point for this conversation. I'd like you to share your background and then also talk about what the catalyst was leading up to building.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, I'll start by saying that I'm French American. So you'll hear, French accent here. I've been living in the US for about 10 years now. I came in the US after, working and living a dream life in Paris. Like a lot of people envisioned that, and it was beautiful and fantastic to work and live out there. But at some point, I wanted to venture further west, settled in San Francisco, and thought that this would be a good place for my wife and I to start a new page in our life and career. And it was a fantastic, the Bay Area has a lot to offer, but I was also somehow, a little bit struggling, to find my pace, and it was a very competitive space.
Mhm.
So starting driving around for Uber, that's a story that I like, sharing. I've had, over 500 rides, and it was a boom of the sharing economy back then in 2016. And it was a good way for me to see what it's like to be on the other side of the driving wheel. Eventually, got the green card, was able to work for startups, worked for a big startup, which is Tesla, where I have been leading business operations for the energy team, which is solar and battery storage. And after Tesla, I decided to take a more entrepreneurial journey. So I started two venture-backed company. Paren is number two, and I'm hoping that I have learned a lot from the experience of number one. And we are off to work into the EV charging space.
Well, you mentioned your origin there. I tried to pronounce your surname Breton. Did I get it right or not?
I think you got it. You got it almost there. Breton. Florent Breton. Florent Breton. I go by Flo at Starbucks, and yes, but you got it right, Jason.
I was trying, I was like, I want to get the phonetics on his surname right. So I was even trying to Google it, and, my Texas Southern accent betrays me. It doesn't allow me to speak in certain ways for some reason, but
you're great.
Yeah,
That was great,
trying.
Jason.
Well, thanks for the background and sharing, how you even got into the EV space. Of course, entrance through by way of Tesla. What was broken when you got into this space that you already knew? What was broken, and what were you expecting to fix with Paren?
Yeah, when I was working at Tesla, I was obviously driving Tesla. That was back in 2017, 2018. It was a fantastic experience, and I was enjoying the supercharger network. I had free charging, unlimited and free charging back then. So I was extensively relying on that. I didn't have any home charging solution as well. So I was 100% relying on superchargers. When I left Tesla, I've kept my car, for quite some time, but eventually I decided to, go for another type of vehicle. So I went to to Audi, and I had a CCS port, and that's when I discovered what it's like to charge outside of the supercharging network. But that was back in 2019, 2020. So the infrastructure was still like at its early stage back then on the CCS side. And there were some hiccups, definitely when it came to the charging experience that was not as seamless as Tesla. And these hiccups were things that my friends and prospective EV buyers were bringing back to me as well. as a possible hurdle for them to further adopt electric vehicle. And as this problem grew, as an entrepreneur, I thought that this would be something that I should be working on.
So help the audience understand where, what Paren does. Where does Paren sit in the EV value chain? Obviously there's different software stacks and different, there's different components. There's hardware and software and
Right.
all that. Lay out for us what Paren is doing and where you sit in the EV value chain, the EV charging infrastructure value chain.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are 100% software company. We don't do any hardware. And the problem that we're trying to solve is one of the things that a lot of people have seen on the driving an EV, which is the distortion in between the information that is provided to them and the experience that they might have once arriving at the charging station itself. For instance, you might be in a situation where you see from the app or the dashboard that the station is up. It is up, but when you arrive on site, it is not working. And that is a big thing about, being up and not working. So how do you measure reliability was one of the things that, my co-founder, Bill Farrell, has been working on, for a long time. Being up doesn't mean working.
Sure.
Another thing which is also like critical is that whether or not that is intentional, but drivers need data to go and have their charging experience. Unless they usually go to the same charging stations over and over, most of the time they need some information to know about where the station is, how many ports is that number of is that port plug compatible with my car? Is it available now? Is it working? How much does it cost? So all these kind of informations, come to the drivers in one way, and we as EV drivers make a decision based on that. And the thing that was broken as well is that the data points were not rich enough and not reliable enough that we would be confident to scale, that the adoption would eventually be growing seamlessly. A lot of people were frustrated by that. So back to your question about where we are playing, we were seeing that the infrastructure was and is growing and is still growing, very actively. Maybe we'll talk about that. So there are more ports out there.
Mm-hmm.
But the question was much more about how can we get reliable information back to the drivers? And that is where we are playing. We decided to create a platform, a data platform that on one side aggregate information from a lot of different sources. We standardize that information and then we enrich that information in order to share it back to the map makers, the charge point operators, the rideshare companies, every enterprise players which can use that information to either make a better decision or to elevate the driver experience.
So the core problem that you identified and what you were set out to solve was actually a driver problem. It was resolving some of the experiences that the drivers are having with those,
Correct.
like you said, those false positives. The charger shows online, you arrive expecting to be able to charge, and you can't for whatever reason. You can't. And so you identified the core problem for the drivers. It's funny, you've brought to market a solution for drivers they may not even know who Parent is.
Right.
But early market entrants, Paren, who leaned in to learn about what solution you had and what problem you were solving, who was leaning in. I know that fleets and, like you said, rideshare and CPOs, everyone can benefit from this because it ties to their utilization and their ROI and really their customer experience, which is the driver, their customer's experience, which is the EV driver. So who leaned in to learn about Paren and what got them to the table? What compelling message did you have that brought them to the table, whether the CPO or the manufacturers? Who came to the table first?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting question. So, we have today about 70,000 charging ports in the US. And as we started aggregating and enriching data, it was, we started that very long journey of
Mhm.
going after this information, processing it, standardizing it. And the really end goal for us is and was or is to have, our information available to the drivers. But as we were marching toward that goal and that vision of having a seamless access to rich and reliable data, a lot of people came to us and say, I'm actually interested in a slice of what you have right now because well, I'm interested or I'm expanding or I have some sort of interest in the state of Nevada or in the state of Washington. And can you help me better understand the market out there? So we realized that the information that we had was, despite the fact that we were building our data set up, was of value. And a lot of people came to us saying, help me make better decision by providing me with the information that you have, which is rich and reliable, so that I can process it into my internal business processes
Hmm.
and make better decisions. So charge point operators reach back out, automakers right away as well, and a few other players came to us originally. One of the things that was driving them was first access to insights that they didn't have before. Every CPO has a very good understanding of obviously their very own network. They
Hmm.
just don't know what's going on across the street, what's going on across the state. And so there is an understanding here for them to assess if there is an opportunity for them to expand their network or how do they benchmark themselves. Another thing that is key is that we standardize information. So, the industry has adopted a format or a language which is called OCPI. And OCPI is our language, but it has a lot of dialects. And we take a lot of work, and Bill and the rest of the team are working very hard to make sure that we standardize information so that we can compare how a station is utilized
Hmm.
on a small network somewhere in Utah and compare that to another port, somewhere else on the other side of the US. So I think standardization was also another driver on top of insights that no one else, had. We mentioned reliability, and that's one of the things that I would want to talk about as well, is that uptime is one component in measuring reliability. But there are many other things associated with the reliability of the charging station. Do I get the power needed? Am I gonna get the experience as seamless as it is? Like the success at first attempt is also like another way of measuring the reliability or the experience of a driving stations. So I think like providing data help us and help drivers and charge point operators. But we're doing this on the software side.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I wanted to ask you is that how does it feel to be like the boots on the ground? So I know Field, has team members, out there working on maintaining and fixing stations. So, we're just seeing numbers. The numbers are improving, but I don't know. I mean, tell me, I mean, just what it is on your side. What do you see?
Yeah, of course, the false positives, chargers that are up that aren't, that is a reality, and the CPOs obviously call on companies like Field Advantage as a field service provider. We're trained on multiple brands of hardware, and we have the skill set. The technicians have the skill set to go out in the market and service the charger, whether it's a hardware issue or a software issue. There's obviously the common failure points are the high friction points on chargers.
Hmm.
I think when we look at the data to see what goes wrong with a charger, activity is at the top of that list, but you cannot get away from the fact that there is constant friction points on these chargers, whether it's the cable management system or the screen that the human interface that the drivers are interacting with, and credit card readers, and all those friction points are areas of the charger that are going through wear and tear. When we go, and that's all external. When we kind of take a step back and open that unit and look internal, if you have a modular design charger, there's modules in there and they have a shelf life. Some OEMs even define the power modules inside of the chargers, which are doing the conversion of AC to DC. Of course, I'm talking about a DC fast charger. They look at that as almost like a consumable. Probably not all OEMs
Right.
define those as consumables, but again, there's wear and tear, kind of like a capacitor that's being charged and discharged, where the modules powering and all of that. So all of those wear points, there's a need. And so the OEMs, depending on kind of what their design of their field service is, they either will self-support, and then that means their engineers got to go into the field and physically do that, or they call companies like Field Advantage, which have been trained by them, and then they go and execute the work and follow the field service procedure. But yeah, what we're seeing, we're seeing, of course, those common friction points, but then also the design of the charger makes a difference too. Each manufacturers have their own design of charger, and some are designed well, and others not so much.
Yeah, I agree. We're seeing though, like that over the last 2 years, a lot of charge point operators have invested massively in maintaining and also like upgrading the hardware, swapping the old version to like newer systems, and overall we are seeing reliability improving. I think for a few reasons. Number one, hardware are better, but number two, there is a greater awareness that reliability is going to be key in retaining drivers and building that brand, for charge pump operators. So I'm glad that the two are sort of happening at the same time, right? And that you guys on the field help maintain, and new hardwares, are also offering a more solid experience.
Well, there's an obvious cost consciousness that the CPO bears. Utilization is driving their ROI. Uptime is driving their ROI, and so the uptime has been a pain point within the industry.
Mm.
So, because it's kind of defined, defined conveniently sometimes by the CPO because the charger is operational. It could charge. Doesn't mean it will, but it's almost like that false signal that it is up.
It
And so
is.
that falls into that category of uptime. But is it really up? If someone pulls up and they can't use it for whatever reason, there's a firmware issue or some kind of connection point that's failing. So CPOs are looking to operationalize data, and that's how they know. So you're just helping the CPO understand probably problem sites and how to respond to that, or maybe even where to go as far as this is an area that the data supports that this would be a high utilized charger. Is that accurate from
Yeah,
some of the
I think,
services that
overall, that's how the platform is used. We didn't get into the space to solely provide insights to charge point operators on where to go next. That is one of the use case that charge point operators have made of the data, but that was not, the primary driver for us to enter the market and say, look, we're solving that problem right here. But yes, I mean, that's how they are, partially leaning on the data, is making better decision on where to go next and what should we expect, how long would it take, can we find a proxy station somewhere else in the US that look like the one that we want to have, and then what does that performance look like, what are the key attributes of performance. So I think, yeah, having standardized information is probably the key to solving a lot of problems, and also bringing clarity and neutrality as well into the.
yeah. You mentioned standardization. Does EV charging data standardize organically, or what does that look like? Because I know that has been a talking point in environments where I've been in, where again, going back to the field services standpoint, if you look at it from the framework of, say, auto OEMs, you plug into the OBD port and there's an error code, an engine code. And for the most part, there's a standardization to that code, what that code represents, that the ECU is putting out an issue, signaling to the dashboard that there's a problem with this vehicle. You plug in, there's a commonality to that code, whether you're looking at uh, the error code that's inside of a Chevrolet or a Ford. There's some commonalities to that. So that standardization. And so are we there yet in EV charging? Is there some standardization? Is it is or not?
I think we're coming to we're getting there, but one of the problem is that right now standardization is based on the reading read that we have over the charging infrastructure. And the reading read right now that some people, I would not say like everybody, but some people have, are powered by crowdsourced data. So, and which has been the case, for a very long time. That's how the industry started. We were sharing, where stations are, and if they were, like level 2, level 3, giving a thumbs up, if they were working, a thumbs down, if they were not. And so that has been a fantastic way for us to get to a stage where we were having pins on a map of, this is where the stations are available for AV drivers. But eventually, what happened is that people starting sharing more and providing more feedback and rating their experiences. But their experiences is very much that, their experiences, and it cannot be true for someone else, and especially, for the person on the same station, maybe like 2 stalls down.
Mm.
So when you go on Google, for instance, and you see a charging station like rated 2.8, because 5 people over the last year have reported like their disappointments. Now, this is not a reflection of how good the station is. This is a reflection of 5 people like facing, challenges at the time of charging, and they are just having that, giving, to the perception to the rest of the world that their experience at 10 a.m. on Sunday is reflecting to the entire 12 ports of that charging station, which didn't work, which worked, perfectly, at that time. So I think standardization is helping us moving away from anecdotal data
Mhm.
which are a real problem for us in the industry. They are creating a false understanding of overperformance or underperformance. And standardization requires us to process a large set of data and having more a statistical approach to the experience that driver are are you know having at a specific charging station.
You highlighted something there that I think is very key, that subjective truth point, and I experienced that personally. My first EV was a Leaf. When I bought it, I was living in a multifamily community that didn't have charging, so I was dependent on public charging. My experience as an EV driver was dependent, 1, on public charging, and 2, it was the closest Electrify America site that was near me
Yeah,
that I would dependent on. Driving the Leaf, that's the CHAdeMO protocol. I had one plug available to me as a guest at that Electrify America station. So
right.
I would be that exception whenever I would pull up, and that seemed to be the charger that had the most problems because it was an older model. They had upgraded the other chargers. They left that one because it had the CHAdeMO, and that was the only one I could use. So I could pull up, and all the other chargers could be available, but someone could be using that particular charger on the CCS protocol.
Hmm.
I can't use the charger because I can't use the other one. So I wait for
Right.
them, and then I try to use my plug and it doesn't work. And so my experience, if I was fair because I'm from the industry, I wouldn't get on plug share and gripe about the things that I understand from a industry standpoint, but that's because I'm in the industry. Another
Right.
customer would say, there's never a charger available. The plug doesn't work. There's all these experiences. That subjective truth is what you keyed in on there because it's almost like it's true when it is, but it's not when it ain't. In
Yeah.
some cases, you asked about field services, or you brought up field services a minute ago, and so a moment ago, and Paren's value. I've seen the dashboard, and I've seen the data examples that I've seen of your dashboard. The value goes beyond just another dashboard. There is actionable insights available through the data that you have access to, both historical, present, et cetera. How is that actionable to the CPO? That goes beyond just another dashboard to look at something. You're creating value. What is an aspect of that that is actionable to the operator from a field support standpoint? Or you could answer it from another angle. It doesn't necessarily have to be from field support.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, multiple times we've been able to reach back out to charge point operators saying, look, the station is up, but it's not working. And they surprisingly didn't know about that. So we have, a status which is giving you a false positive. And then what we are seeing is that someone goes out there, charges on stall, number one, but eventually only charges for 1 minute. And we're like, that doesn't look like a very successful charging session.
Mhm.
And so someone else comes by, a few minutes later and only charges, for 2 minutes or 3 minutes and, plugs off. And at the same time, we are seeing like the rest of the station being extremely busy. And we come to the conclusion that something is off out there on that particular stall, not being able to deliver, a continuous charge to drivers. So we reach back out, to charge point operators and we tell them, look, there is something off there. And
Mhm.
sometimes, they just don't know about that. So we are helping some charge point operators understanding what the driver experience is. I think they have fantastic solutions internally to monitor the network and they are not waiting for Paren, to come and tell them, what's working and what's not working. But I think we are just like one additional data point where we add, value on a more continuous way is by being part of their daily operations where they can monitor not only their station, but also the surrounding environment and they can make business decisions, out of that. And when we are also part of their strategic decision process, such as we are operating with such strategy, but we want to expand either geographically, we want to expand with a different product, we want to expand with a larger set of stations, we want to expand with a different type of ports and eventually venture out and have more next ports. And then all of a sudden, the charge point operator, if they don't have insight, it's pretty much a shot in the dark about, I'm going to make a bet that this is going to work. But we parent tell them, look, it's working out there or it's not working. And these are the reasons why, it can make this a successful experience for drivers. So by providing that information to charge point operators, we are becoming, a strong partner of their daily operation and strategic decisions as well.
That's That's good, and that's valuable because the guessing game has not been successful, and there was a lot of guessing going on in this industry early on as sites were deployed based on access to power or some other factor that may have not been a recipe for success in terms of utilization. The drivers in that market are passing through that markets. Paren is helping the CPO to separate signal from noise. And as you've scaled that data, you've no doubt found operators that they obsess over a particular data point that may not be as important as this other data set or this other information that you need to factor in if you want a site to be successful. That's good. And so it's so helpful what Parent is doing in this EV space and so critical for the operators, and which affects the whole value chain, because if the
Yeah,
CPO is successful, then they're buying more chargers. And if they're buying more chargers, then the OEM benefits from that because the OEM is building more chargers and selling more chargers. And if that's happening, that's good for field advantage because we got more equipment to hopefully not provide corrective maintenance on, but provide preventative maintenance on and commissioning
absolutely.
and supporting the chargers through their life cycle. All of that is helping. And so it all starts with good data, real data, and current accurate data. And to that comment, to that point, this week, Perrin released a state of the industry report. I believe that went live this week, correct?
That went live this morning,
This morning.
Wednesday, January 28th. Yes, absolutely.
Great, great. Yeah, I had seen the preview of it on the website, and I knew that it was coming. Candidly, I've already downloaded it. So if it was released today, I downloaded my copy about an hour ago. When you put this data together, who is it for? And then also, we want to let the audience know how it's accessed. But who is this report for, and who is it helping?
Yes, it's a great question. So every single day, we connect live to over 95, 96% of the 70,000 charging ports in the US. And we're also operating in Canada. Every single day, we process a lot of information in real time. That's about 100 million data events that we process on a daily basis because a charger has a status that is changing, pricing is changing. You have nearby amenities as well with different opening hours. I mean, you have just like so many different things happening, at the time of the charging event that it creates a massive amount of data that we have. And we are working with charge point operators, automakers, ride-share operators to share back that data. But at the same time, we thought that it would be nice if we could share some of what we are seeing and our, insights with a broader audience and make that report free. And so we're extremely proud now that for the last year, we have been able to release a quarterly report, which is a look into how the electric vehicle and fast charging industry is evolving in the US. And that is what this report is about. It's our tech standardized, neutral on how the electric vehicle and fast charging industry is moving. And so we're very excited to release that report. And yeah, happy to share a few highlights, if you want me to.
Yeah, I would like to do that, but I'd like to not to be redundant, but I want to double click on a point that you just made. Double click, embolden it, underline it. How many data
Okay.
points did you say you are pulling on a daily basis?
100.
100 million data points, and that's every
Yep.
day. That's a lot of
That's
data.
every day. It's a lot of
Yeah.
data. Yes.
Again, haven't read through the report in its entirety. Got my copy this morning. Off the cuff, capacity, demand, reliability is moving in sync. Is that accurate? Capacity,
Yes,
demand, and
it's moving in
reliability.
sync and it's moving fast. So one of the major takeaway that we wanted to share with our review of 2025 is that supply grew. So when we take a look at the number of charging ports and fast charging ports deployed in the US, we are seeing 18,041 ports, DCFC ports deployed in 2025. That is 30% more than in 2024. So
Mm.
already in itself, the infrastructure is growing, offering drivers more charging options, faster charging speed as well, which we're seeing that these ports are obviously operating at a faster speed and at stations that are also offering more charging stalls as well. We are seeing, the average non-Tesla charging station growing and releasing, not only 4 charging stalls, but sometimes 24. And so
Mm.
that's a trend that we have been seeing over 2025. So on the supply side, the main take is that the infrastructure is growing. We also wanted to take a look at what the demand looks like. And the demand has been very strong over 2025. We have seen 141 million charging sessions, fast charging sessions in the US only in 2025, which is also about 30% more than what we have seen in 2024. So it's a massive number because when you think about it and you have that number, understanding that we have what 6 7 million of electric vehicle capable of charging at these stations in the US, it's a massive number,
Yeah.
and we're just talking fast charging. We're not talking like home charging. Let's these numbers sink a little bit, and these are fantastic numbers on the demand side.
That is a fantastic number. 140, just to repeat it, make sure I caught
Yeah,
it and make sure the audience caught it. In 2025, there was a 38% increase from the previous year, and that equated on DC fast charging only 141 million successful charging sessions occurred
that
in
is
20.
correct.
Wow,
Yes.
that's impressive. That's impressive. 140, and that again, that's not the false positive. That's not it turned on and charged for 30 seconds and then timed
Right.
out. And yeah, that's a
Yes,
successful charging
absolutely.
session.
These are
Wow.
successful charging stations, of an average, 30 something minutes. What is actually also like very interesting is that at the beginning of 2025, I think in January, we were at about 9 million charging stations on a monthly basis. Obviously, you have seasonality, fewer people travel during the winter times, and then they travel more during summer, then they travel more during the winter holidays and Thanksgiving and Christmas. At the end of 2025, in December, we were surpassing 13 million charging sessions on a monthly basis. And as of January 28th, it looks like we're going to be at a solid, 12 million or plus in January. So if we compare that to where we were last year, it looks like we're going to keep probably on growing the number of charging sessions, over 2026. So this is a fantastic news, for the industry. That means that more people are adopting EV.
Mm.
Probably people who are buying EVs right now, who have been, buying EVs at the end of Q3, trying to benefit from the tax credits available then, they don't necessarily have a charging option at home. And they're relying, like you did with your Leaf, back
Mhm,
then, exclusively on the publicly available charging infrastructure.
mhm,
But the good news is that the infrastructure is there. The infrastructure is better. It's better
mhm.
because better hardware, better maintenance, with field and other people maintaining the infrastructure. And so we're getting to the point where there is an equilibrium right now. And we're hoping to see, that continuous growth, both on supply and demand over 2026.
Of that 141 million sessions, was there a percentage of that that was fleet, or was it all public charging?
All public charging.
Wow. Okay. So for private equity that's listening to this episode,
Yeah.
VC that's listening to this episode, there's some money in charging. What I would even wonder what an aggregate revenue number could be attached to 141 million sessions. I know that that's not
Yeah.
probably a data point that you would have that, but that's kind of off topic, but just thinking, you know what I mean? What kind of revenue could be attached to that amount of sessions? I know it's spread out across multiple
Sure.
CPOs and all of that, but I mean, it's an important number because, and it ties into a theme that I'm seeing in various episodes on field frequency with guests that are coming through. Mike Battaglia from Blink that was talking about profitability in DC fast charging that Blink is experiencing, and other guests that have been on that have been talking about this is not an industry that's crashing. This is an industry that is growing and moving towards maturation. So that's good. Well, um, we've talked about a lot of positivity that was found in the industry report. Any uncomfortable or maybe unknown truths that surfaced in that report?
Yeah, not necessarily uncomfortable, but what we are seeing is that the market is going at different speeds. So you
Okay.
have some states that are moving pretty fast. Obviously, California is moving pretty fast. California has been rolling out, like 30% more charging ports from one year to another as well. I think the growth is really out there, but we want to make sure that it's evenly benefiting everybody in the US. And we're not seeing necessarily the same level of adoption from one state to another and from one city to another. So you have extreme demand in cities like metro areas such as Miami, LA, San Diego, San Francisco, New York City, Brooklyn, all of these major cities are seeing actually a saturation of their charging infrastructure. There is way more demand out there than there is a supply of fast charging ports for a lot of different reasons. population density, the number of ride share drivers out there using electric vehicles. So I think there are a lot of different reasons why it's happening. At the same time, some of the states have not necessarily reached the same level of maturity. What we are seeing what we are seeing, which is like a good news, is that ports are being deployed, but people are not necessarily adopting electric vehicle as fast because of probably trust or because of the density not being there for them to comfortably own an EV and understand that they can cross the state with their EV, for instance. So that's where we want to be cautious. We don't want to be in a situation where electric vehicle is growing, but it's only benefiting to part of the population. We want to make sure that the infrastructure is overall growing, benefiting to everybody, so that we all reach to the point where we feel comfortable leaning on the public stations to charge and move around.
You've had an interesting seat observing what's going on in this space, and so I guess I'd like you to give us a little prediction, if you could, from just where you've been sitting from your vantage point. 3 years out, what do you predict is going to be better in EV charging, and what will we not have figured out yet 3 years out?
Yeah, I think, overall, if I use like a very simple, like business school type of framework, but,
Mm,
when it comes down to marketing, you have the four P's. You have product, promotion, place, and price. I think overall, the product is better now than it was, a few years ago. And it's going
mhm,
to be much better by being more reliable in the future, better maintenance, better hardware, but also being faster. We're
mm,
seeing what's happening in China, right now, where they are capable of delivering 1 megawatt of power at some of
wow.
their charging network. Alpitronics is rolling out 400 kilowatt as well, so which is great. So we're seeing that trend, but that's going to be a thing. Place, I think in terms of place, we're going to see a much better density of charging stations, across the U.S., and that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that the industry, in the future, will have enough charging ports in dense and urban areas such as the cities that I just mentioned before, but also connecting people in between these cities as well. So that's going to be the thing. The promotion in itself, I'm hoping that people will get access to the information around where the charging stations are and how reliable, the pricing, the amenities nearby, and everything else. I'm hoping that the UX and the UI
Mhm,
that people are using when driving around is either their in-dash system or the app that they are using will provide way better and easier information for them to make their navigation decision. And then price wise, I don't necessarily expect price, to change that much. Probably it's going to be a little bit more dynamic, but we are not necessarily seeing the dynamic pricing being adopted widely.
mm.
So yeah, hopefully, this is going to be the price will remain at a point where demand can be comfortable and meeting the supply of chargers.
Well, what a great response. One, thank you. And then also, Florent, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate you sharing your time with us today and with the audience. I'd like to get you to share how people can connect with you directly if they have any questions. Please share, where to follow Paren, and also how can they access the State of the Industry report that we talked a little bit about.
Yeah, we are available we have a website. It's called Paren.app, Paren.app. People can go out there. We have a lot of free data available. There's a section called reports, and then they can download for free, the reports that we just mentioned and talked about. So that's one way. We also have two openings, maybe, if you have people listening who would want to join the team. So we are growing our team on the marketing and on the sales side as well. So feel free to reach out. There is a career section with a few jobs, open right now. And then on LinkedIn, we're trying to post from time to time and share, some of these insights with our audience.
Great. Great. So they can connect with you through all those channels. Florent, this has been a great conversation. Thank you for coming on Field Frequency.
Thank you so much, Jason. Great speaking with you. Thank you.